I hurt myself today to see if I still feel. I focus on the pain, the only thing that's real.
Until the AIDS epidemic happened in the early 80s, I had no notion that anything like this would occur, nor did anyone else, because the type of damage that the human immunodeficiency virus, and I'll call it HIV, caused was unique and unknown at that time. And suddenly this incredible epidemic unraveled and appeared before us with no idea.
On June 5, 1981, the Center of Disease Control reported the outbreak of a mysterious fatal illness in 5 men in Los Angeles. Within a month, a second report noted 16 more cases in San Francisco, New York, and LA. The men showed symptoms of a rare cancer and pneumonia typically seen in patients with compromised immune systems. These were the first cases of an illness that would be named acquired immune deficiency syndrome, more commonly known as AIDS. A patient developed AIDS from contracting a virus called HIV, short for human immunodeficiency virus.
HIV and AIDS were initially cloaked in mystery, and doctors were calling it a modern-day plague whose targets were gay men. Dr. Tim Lane treated his first AIDS patients in Greensboro, North Carolina in 1983.
These young men would get sick from their HIV infections, and they would return to be taken care of in their dying days and months back into their homes. And this occurred all over the United States, and those are the first patients I took care of.
No one knew how people contracted it, only that it was a death sentence.
So it was a very significant time of anxiety. And when you throw in anxiety and add a little bit of anger and hostility and discrimination, you've got a toxic brew.
What started as a health crisis became political. Many called the disease gay cancer. There was a common sentiment that it was divine retribution.
I remember reading letters to the editor in our local newspaper saying it's God's punishment.
And since it was not yet understood how AIDS was contracted, people worried that they would get infected from shaking hands with, drinking from the same cup, or sitting on the same toilet as someone who was gay.
There was always those group of people that you knew didn't really understand our lifestyle, even though it was New York City, and you knew you had to be really careful because they would be careful being around you. Like they'd want to have gloves on, or they wouldn't want to drink out of the same coffee cups, or they wouldn't want to sit next to you in the cafeteria. You knew those stigmas all were there for you.
At age 19, Bill O'Brien moved to New York City in 1981. He says he grew up in a small town in Connecticut, and at the time there was no place for a gay man in a small town. In New York, he made a community of friends, but within a couple of years, his friends began dying. Over 2 decades, Bill lived between New York City and Provincetown, and he lost 23 friends to AIDS.
It touches a part of your soul that's really, really sad. That you lost so many friends and that you've stayed isolated for so many years. My partner's my best friend, but I don't have any more best friends because I don't want to lose anyone else anymore.
In 1990, almost a decade after the AIDS epidemic began, Boston Globe reporter Bella English wrote, "AIDS is not about druggies and homos. It's not about blame or shame. It's about a vicious, tenacious disease that is imperiling our community and our healthcare system." More than 17 years later, Bella English reflected on her time covering the AIDS crisis as a news reporter, writing this email. "I remember I finally found a young gay couple who agreed to not only let me use their names, but also have their photo shot. One of them was seriously ill, dying, and the other one was taking care of him. My photo department refused to assign a photographer. When I asked why, the photo editor, an old Shire guy, said, 'We don't have to accept an assignment if we feel it puts us in danger.' I said, 'I'm 6 months pregnant, and I'm going to be there and have dinner with them. I don't feel it is going to harm me or my baby.' Finally, a young woman photographer agreed to do the shoot. That was 1986. Those were the bad old days of AIDS.
Randy Schultz was a newspaper writer in San Francisco who lived and died with AIDS. In his book, And the Band Played On, Schultz argues that the federal government ignored the AIDS crisis for years, because it was initially only targeting homosexual men and the government did not care if those men died. How very American, he thought, to look at a disease as homosexual or heterosexual, as if viruses had the intelligence to choose between different inclinations of human behavior.
The President of the United States at the time, Ronald Reagan, didn't say the acronym AIDS. He didn't pronounce the acronym AIDS until 1987, maybe late 86. We were 5 years into one of the most frightening epidemics to affect mankind, and he didn't say the word. And he had very strong feelings about gay people. And, part of it was the conservative, evangelical point of view. Well, I think it was a very common point of view that homosexuality was, in the medical field, it was actually a psychiatric disorder.
In moments of epic crisis, heroes can be born. Often these heroes are unexpected heroes who felt compelled to rise to the occasion. These heroes' missions might be dictated by their life circumstances. Ron Woodruff is one such unexpected hero from the AIDS crisis. Ron Woodruff was an electrician living in Texas who contracted HIV from having unprotected sex with a woman who was infected. In 1986, Woodruff was diagnosed with AIDS and told he had 30 days to live. Woodruff was prescribed the drug AZT, which he quickly decided was causing more harm than good. Woodruff believed that the government and pharmaceutical companies were trying to make money by limiting the AIDS drugs available to patients. He took medical matters into his own hands, creating the Dallas Buyers Club, an underground drug store catering to AIDS and HIV patients that was run out of his apartment in Oak Lawn, Texas. The Dallas Buyers Club carried as many as 112 drugs that were not approved by the FDA from countries including England, Germany, Japan, and Denmark, where these therapies were approved. From 1986 to 1992, Woodruff made more than 300 trips across the unpredictable Mexican border, each time cramming about 500,000 pills in the trunk of his rented Lincoln Continental. By 1992, the Dallas Buyers Club had 4,000 regular customers. It had earned a reputation as the wildest, most risk-taking group at work to combat AIDS with medical therapies in the United States. In 1992, Ron Woodruff said, "It is not a matter of whether or not you want to take these risks. It's a matter that you have to take these risks."
There were other unexpected heroes of the AIDS crisis. Jeffrey Bowers, the inspiration for the movie Philadelphia. Bowers was a gay attorney, and he sued a law firm who fired him because of his AIDS diagnosis. He filed one of the first AIDS discrimination cases, and although he won, he died before the court ruled in his favor. Another hero was Nurse Alice Foley, who cared for more than 200 men dying from AIDS in Provincetown at a time when the majority of people feared they would contract AIDS by simply touching someone who was infected. Another is Rock Hudson. He was a movie star and heartthrob. Hudson's PR firm tried to hide his illness to preserve his image, but Hudson decided more good could come from the public learning the truth. Hudson was the first famous person to die from AIDS. By coming out about being gay and dying from AIDS, Hudson's footnote in history was dramatically changed from movie star to activist. When Hudson died, he left thousands of dollars to AIDS research, and he inspired another unexpected hero of the AIDS crisis, Liz Taylor. Hudson and Taylor had starred in a movie together and had been great friends. She dedicated the rest of her life to funding AIDS research and being an advocate for the rights of people with HIV and AIDS.
Movie stars to lawbreakers and rebels. Doctors, patients, friends of the suffering. Each finding a way to inspire change and progress in time of crisis.
Finally, in 1995, complex cocktails of antiviral drugs gave healthcare workers the weapons they needed to fight HIV and AIDS, and people with HIV could live without the fear of pending death.
I didn't go to work saying I'm going to be a hero today. I went to work saying, I have all this outstanding education and training, that putting it to work was a privilege.
I think you make a choice in your life and you say that enough's enough and I need to stand for something. And I think that's what happens to people. It's too bad that it had to happen to so many people before someone took a stand and said, enough's enough.
I was bruised and battered, I couldn't tell what I felt. I was unrecognizable to myself. Saw my reflection in a window and didn't know my own face. Oh brother, are you gonna leave me wasting away?